You know, when a company gets slammed by ransomware, the first question everyone asks is, how on earth did they get in? It's basically a digital crime scene. And you've got these forensic experts who are the detectives, and their job is to sift through this absolute mountain of data to find that one unlocked door. So today, we're going to follow their trail of digital breadcrumbs and see exactly how they pieced this whole puzzle together.
And that's the big question, right? Imagine the scene. The servers are all locked up, the business is completely dead in the water, and the pressure is just immense. It must feel like an impossible task. But the thing is, these investigators, they have a very specific, very methodical place they always start.
And that starting point, it's always the same. Find patient zero. This is the very first chink in the armor, the initial machine, the first compromised account that let the bad guys in. It's the ground zero for the entire infection. And finding it, well, that's absolutely the most critical first step. So attackers have a whole bag of tricks, but most of the time, how they first get in boils down to one of two main ways. You can think of it like this. Either they force the front door, or they trick someone into opening it for them. We're going to look at two real-world case studies today that show you exactly how both of these methods work.
Okay, let's dive into case number 1, the forced entry. So in this case, the attackers went after the company's remote desktop protocol server. You'll hear that called RDP. It's a super common tool that lets people log into their work computers from home. Super useful, right? But the problem is, if it's just sitting there exposed to the internet, it becomes this giant blinking target for criminals.
So, you might be wondering, just how hard did these attackers try? Well, when the investigators cracked open the server's security logs, they found this number. Get ready for it. 196,378. And listen, that's not the total number of login attempts. That's how many times they failed. It's like a digital battering ram. This is a classic brute force attack, just automated scripts hammering away at that server with thousands of password guesses hour after hour after hour.
So with all that noise, how do they find anything? Well, here's the really clever part. The investigators don't have to read every single one of those log entries. Nope. They're hunting for just two very specific digital fingerprints in the Windows logs. Event ID 4625, that's a failure. And the one they really care about, the golden ticket, Event ID 4624. That one means an account successfully logged on.
And this visual just nails the challenge they're up against. On the left, you've got this absolute tidal wave of failures. It's just a wall of digital noise. And on the right, buried somewhere in all that mess, are the one or two successes that matter. I mean, talk about a needle in a haystack. So how in the world did they find it?
Okay, this is where the real detective work shines. They used a super smart filter. See, they knew the bad guys were coming in through RDP, and RDP has its own little digital signature, logon type 10. So they just told their tool, hey, ignore all those 200,000 failures. Show me only the successful logins that are type 10. And poof! Just like that, the entire list collapses down to just 2 entries. That's it. That's the breakthrough moment.
And here it is, the final piece of the puzzle for case number 1. Those 2 successful logins, they came from this IP address. A quick check with threat intelligence tools traced it back to a server in Russia. Now, for this particular company, a login from there was a huge red flag, totally out of the ordinary. And the account they used to get in? Administrator, one of the most common and laziest usernames out there. The door wasn't just unlocked, it was kicked wide open.
All right, let's switch gears and look at a totally different kind of attack. For our second case, the threat didn't come from a brute force attack on the outside. Nope, this one started from the inside on a single employee's computer. This is that trick 'em into letting you in scenario we talked about.
The super sneaky technique they used here is something called process injection. See, to get past antivirus software, the malware is too clever to run as its own obvious suspicious program. Instead, it injects its malicious code into a totally normal, trusted Windows process that's already running. It's exactly like a parasite hiding inside a healthy cell, trying to go completely unnoticed.
So how do you find a parasite like that? Well, the investigators have to do what's called a memory analysis. They basically take a snapshot of the computer's live RAM to look for clues, and it's a very methodical hunt. First, they use a tool to scan for any hidden code. Then they map out all the running programs to see which one is the parent and which is the child. Next, they check the exact command that was used to launch each one. And finally, they trace any and all network connections to see if it's talking to someone it shouldn't be. And bam!
That command line analysis gives him their first huge clue. They see a totally legitimate Windows program, run DLL32.exe, but it's being used to run a file with a very weird name, jwkgpq.euz. I mean, look at it. It's just a random jumble of letters. A file name like that in a user's temporary folder, that is a massive, flashing, neon red flag for any investigator.
So the next logical question is, okay, is this weird thing talking to anyone on the internet? And of course it was. The network scan connected the dots, linking the computer to this IP address right here. And as you can see from this web, threat intelligence platforms already knew this IP was bad news. It was already linked to a whole mess of other malicious files. The case is really starting to come together.
So they took all these digital fingerprints and cross-referenced them in their databases, and they got a positive ID. The source material I read actually said it just like this. Emotet. Yes, Emotet. Now, if you're not familiar, Emotet is one of the most notorious malware families out there. It's not actually the ransomware itself. Think of Emotet as the specialist burglar who's an expert at breaking in, casing the joint, and then selling the keys to the highest-bidding ransomware gang. They had found Patient Zero, the beachhead, for a much bigger invasion.
Okay, so at this point, they've got it all. They know the name of the malware, they know which machine got hit, and they have the IP addresses it was talking to. The last thing to do is rewind the tape and build the full second-by-second timeline of exactly how this infection happened.
And here's the whole story, laid out for us. It all starts at 8:49 in the morning. A user on a machine named CarPC opens a malicious Word doc that came in through an email. A hidden script inside that document then uses PowerShell, which is a totally legitimate admin tool, by the way, to go out and download the Emotet malware. Then, to make sure it can survive a reboot, the malware digs itself into the Windows registry to set up what we call persistence. And finally, it starts calling home to its masters. The entire chain of infection, from click to compromise, totally uncovered.
So after seeing all this incredible detective work, what does it all mean for you? What can we learn from this that actually helps us stay safe?
All right, let's boil it all down. What are the big lessons here? First, from that brute force attack in case 1, stop using common usernames, like administrator. And for goodness sakes, use multi-factor authentication. It is the single best defense against these kinds of attacks. It's like a digital deadbolt on your front door. Now, from case 2, the phishing attack, be so skeptical of any email attachment that asks you to click that Enable Content button. That's almost always the trigger for something bad. Also remember that attackers love using your own tools, like PowerShell, against you. And finally, if you ever see a file with a crazy, random name in a user folder, that's a major warning sign. Don't ignore it.
And that's really the crucial thing to remember here. All of this incredible forensic work is about figuring out how the attackers got through the door. But for the bad guys, getting in, that's just the first step. That's just the beginning. The real damage, the stuff that brings companies to their knees, all of that happens next, which leaves us with a pretty chilling question, doesn't it? What happens after the break-in?